the conspiracy of the President of the Constitutional Court, Cándido Conde-Pumpido, to keep Pedro Sánchez in power. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares. And as always, the information never stops. And the judicial schemes, not just the corruption schemes, but also the judicial schemes to favor and keep the president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, in power in Moncloa, continue. Pay attention because I'm going to tell you about a conspiracy that is being plotted, no less, in the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court of Cándido Conde-Pumpido and the Court of Auditors, presided over by the leftist Enriqueta Chicano, to keep Pedro Sánchez in power so he can continue governing. We'll share all this info with you as always on screen. By the way, if you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. We're already on our way to 137,000 subscribers. We'll soon reach 140,000 and we're getting very close to 150,000. And now we have the main characters of this story on screen. And we're going to zoom in on them. Here you have, standing on the left, the President of the Constitutional Court, Cándido Conde-Pumpido, and sitting the President of the Court of Auditors, Enriqueta Chicano. I've always said that around Pedro Sánchez there's a sort of judicial network in which, well, Pedro Sánchez has placed his people at the head of the institutions. Right now, in the office of the Attorney General, we have Teresa Peramato, who is the Attorney General. Before her, it was Álvaro García Ortiz, both members of that judicial network to benefit Pedro Sánchez. And here we have these two main figures, who are the President of the Constitutional Court, Cándido Conde-Pumpido, and the President of the Court of Auditors, Enriqueta Chicano. Well, I hope what I'm about to tell you. The President of the Court of Auditors, Enriqueta Chicano, is preparing the legal cover so that the President of the Constitutional Court, Cándido Conde-Pumpido, can endorse it. So that the President of the government, Pedro Sánchez, can govern without presenting new general state budgets. We are talking about a multi-sided conspiracy. Enriqueta Chicano announced last June 9th the preparation of a legal study in the Court of Auditors about the consequences of extending the budgets for years. You know that Pedro Sánchez lacks support in the chamber to pass a budget and must negotiate with parties still backing his government. But they can get even more out of him if they negotiate the budgets, and what Pedro Sánchez has been doing since 2023 is extending the budgets. Instead of making new ones that have to be negotiated, he just extends. Is this constitutional? Well, obviously it's not constitutional. Cándido Conde-Pumpido is in the Constitutional Court to declare whatever Pedro Sánchez wants as constitutional. And to this we have to add the other piece of the puzzle. Enriqueta Chicano, the President of the Court of Auditors. Well, Enriqueta Chicano, as I just mentioned to you, announced at the beginning of June that they were preparing a legal study on the consequences of extending the budget for years. Well, obviously the consequence is that it's not constitutional, right? Well, Chicano was doing all this at the Court of Auditors preparing this report while we were revealing it on Medidas Cautelares and Libertad Digital. That Conde-Pumpido had created a working group mostly made up of leftist lawyers from the Constitutional Court. All of this with the aim of declaring it constitutional for Sánchez to govern without presenting new budgets. In other words, Pedro Sánchez has the problem of the budgets, but so that he can keep governing and stay in La Moncloa, he has Cándido Conde-Pumpido in the Constitutional Court and Chicano in the Court of Auditors. Sources from the Court of Auditors, consulted by Medidas Cautelares, state that the legal report that Chicano will prepare will serve as an excuse for Conde-Pumpido to be able to endorse it in the Constitutional Court. The constitutionality of Pedro Sánchez governing without presenting new state budgets by extending those from 2023, Chicano is only preparing, we're told, the introduction for Conde-Pumpido. It's no coincidence that the Court of Auditors is preparing to draft a legal report on the consequences of extending the budgets. For years, right at the same moment as Conde-Pumpido has created a working group in the Constitutional Court to endorse the constitutionality of this practice, which is clearly unconstitutional on the part of Pedro Sánchez. The same sources we consulted tell us that Chicano and Conde-Pumpido are working as a team to favor Pedro Sánchez. It cannot be ruled out that when the Court of Auditors prepares its aforementioned legal report, this document could be used as a strong argument, as a valuable argument by the working group that Conde-Pumpido has created in the Constitutional Court. In this way, the Constitutional Court would endorse the constitutionality of Sánchez being able to continue governing without presenting new budgets, relying on the Court of Auditors, whose report would thus serve as an excuse. We recall that the full bench of the Constitutional Court unanimously approved months ago to admit for processing the so-called conflict of powers presented by the Senate, which is in the hands of the Popular Party, against the socialist government, for precisely failing in its duty to present the draft budget law to the Parliament. As we mentioned months ago under the Conde-Pumpido, they were already studying the way for the Constitutional Court to endorse that Sánchez can govern without those new budgets. It should be noted that Article 134.3 of the Spanish Constitution states verbatim that the government must present the general state budgets to the Congress of Deputies, at least 3 months before the expiration of those from the previous year. Pedro Sánchez has been skipping this for 3 years and nothing happens here. As always, when the left does it, when Pedro Sánchez does it, nothing happens here. The Senate, with a PP majority, considered that the inaction of Sánchez's government, which has already extended the budgets in 2024 and 2025 and still hasn't presented those for the current year, violates the prerogatives established for Parliament by Article 134.5 of the Constitution. It is established here that once the general state budgets are approved, the government may present bills that involve an increase in public spending or a decrease in revenues for the same budget year. In other words, the fact that they are not presenting new general state budgets is already unconstitutional and also affects another provision of the Constitution. And the thing is, without those new budgets, the government, according to the PP, wouldn't be able to present new bills. Because one thing is related to the other, but they ignore every rule. They do whatever they want. The working group of Conde-Pumpido. As I told you in precautionary measures, well, a few weeks ago, Cándido Conde-Pumpido created a working group to study all the conflicts of jurisdiction presented by the PP and the Senate. Basically, there's something fishy going on. This working group is a group to approve whatever Conde-Pumpido wants to approve to help Pedro Sánchez. That's the translation. This group is made up of leftist retirees from the Constitutional Court, who already participated back in the day in another working group to endorse the constitutionality, pay attention, of the amnesty law from Sánchez's government. This working group will study the legal arguments to support in the Constitutional Court that the socialist executive has not presented new budgets for 3 years and that it can continue governing without it being unconstitutional. It is not ruled out that the final report may include a small warning to Sánchez without further consequences about the importance of approving the budgets. In other words, a small warning just to cover things up a bit. Because of course, even they realize that the issue is so blatant that they say, well, we're going to say it's constitutional, but we'll throw in a little slap on the wrist here, and that way we cover things up a bit. Well, that's what they're plotting right now in the Constitutional Court with Cándido Conde-Pumpido. And this is the information I just revealed to you, very serious information that affects nothing less than the Constitutional Court of Cándido Conde-Pumpido and the Constitutional Court presided over by Enriqueta Chicano. On one hand, the President of the Constitutional Court, Enriqueta Chicano, has announced the preparation of a legal report on the consequences of extending the general state budget. And, at the same time, the Constitutional Court of Cándido Conde-Pumpido is creating a working group to declare that it is constitutional for Pedro Sánchez to keep extending the budgets and not present a new budget. One issue is related to the other, because when the Constitutional Court prepares its report, this report will become the necessary legal cover for the Constitutional Court. Cándido Conde-Pumpido can say that indeed Sánchez can remain in power. Can he stay in La Moncloa by extending the budgets and without complying with the Constitution, which requires presenting new general state budgets every year? This is a scandal. It's a huge scandal, because just because there are so many scandals doesn't mean we're going to stop denouncing all of them. They are all extremely serious. The assault on state institutions by Pedro Sánchez's government has daily consequences, and the main ones affected are all of us citizens. And that's why the role of this channel, of Medidas Cautelares, and of myself is so important. To keep you as informed as possible about each and every move in this judicial scheme orchestrated by Pedro Sánchez within the institutions, which he manipulates and uses to stay in power, to remain in La Moncloa. And that's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you know you can become a member for less than €3 a month as one of the chosen, or a supreme member for less than €7 a month. You can also make contributions via Bizum at 627556370. And today we're going to dedicate today's program to our new subscriber, one of our chosen members, Luis Rosa. Thank you so much, Luis, for your trust. We are now 107 members of Medidas Cautelares. Honestly, I'm impressed by all your support. Thank you very much. And leave me your opinions, your comments, what you think is going to happen, your likes, which you already know help this video reach many people. And I want to thank you again because this last month has been incredible for Medidas Cautelares. The audience we're getting, we're breaking records, and that's all thanks solely and exclusively to you. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.